The moment an avoidant says something that sounds like, I don't know why this matters so much, but I don't want to lose you, the game has changed. Because now you're not dealing with chemistry alone. You're not dealing with flirtation, convenience, timing, loneliness, or two people passing each other in the dark and calling it fate. You are dealing with conflict inside a human being. Real conflict. The kind that only shows up when somebody has gotten past the armor. The kind that only appears when your presence is no longer easy to reduce, easy to dismiss, easy to compartmentalize. And that matters, because avoidant people are masters at reduction. They reduce what they feel so they can survive it. They reduce what they want so they don't have to need it. They reduce your significance so they don't have to face the terror of what it would mean if you were actually important. So when that person looks at you, or texts you, or says in some halting, awkward, almost accidental way, I don't want to lose you, that is not a casual sentence. That is a fracture in the pattern. And you need to hear me on this. A fracture in the pattern is not the same thing as a finished transformation. That's where people get hurt. They hear one true sentence and build a fantasy empire around it. They hear one honest moment and treat it like a lifelong guarantee. They hear one confession and ignore 10 contradictions. And then they say love betrayed them. No. What betrayed them was the meaning they attached too quickly. What betrayed them was the story they built before the behavior caught up. That's the first thing you've got to understand if you want peace in this part of your life. An avoidant saying the truth is significant. It is not sufficient. There's a difference. A massive difference. Because what is avoidant psychology, really? It's not cruelty. Not most of the time. It's not indifference. Not most of the time. It's not a lack of feeling. That's the distortion people make when they're wounded by it. What it usually is, deep down, is an old adaptation that says closeness is dangerous, dependence is risky, vulnerability costs too much, and if I need you too much, I lose control of myself. So they become highly skilled at wanting with the brakes on. They reach, then retract. They feel, then analyze. They move close, then suddenly need space they can't even explain. They tell themselves stories that make distance look intelligent. They say things like, I'm confused, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not ready, I just need to focus on myself, when sometimes the deeper truth is much simpler and much more human. This is affecting me more than I know how to handle. Now that line right there, that's the line nobody teaches you to hear. Because the avoidant rarely says exactly what you wish they would say. Rarely. They don't usually arrive with polished emotional language. They don't sit down like a therapist and say, I am experiencing attachment activation, and my nervous system is deactivating in response to increasing intimacy. No, they say it sideways. They leak it. It comes out in fragments. It comes out in contradiction. It comes out in a sentence that sounds smaller than the feeling underneath it. That's why when an avoidant says, I don't want to lose you, or I hate how much I care about this, or I keep trying to pull away, but I can't fully let you go, you are hearing something bigger than the words. You are hearing a defended person run into a feeling stronger than their defense. And that does mean something. It means you got past the front gate. It means your presence touched something real. It means you are not interchangeable. But listen carefully, because this is where your maturity gets tested. It does not automatically mean they are ready to love you well. It does not mean they have the capacity yet to sustain what they have finally admitted. It does not mean your job is to bleed patiently until they catch up. You can be deeply important to somebody and still be unsafe with them. That's one of the hardest truths in adult love. Importance is not the same as readiness. Intensity is not the same as consistency. A breakthrough is not the same as a foundation. And a sentence is not the same as a life. A lot of you listening to this right now, you don't get trapped because you're naive. You get trapped because something in you is still trying to heal an old wound through a new person. You think if the emotionally unavailable one finally chooses you, finally names you, finally fights for you, then all the old pain gets rewritten. Then the younger version of you, the one who felt unseen, unstable, unwanted, finally gets a different ending. And I get it. I really do. Because that pull is powerful. It's not weakness. It's longing with history behind it. But history makes people do dangerous math. You start overvaluing difficult love because it resembles familiar love. You start confusing emotional scarcity with emotional depth. You start thinking the person who makes you work hardest must be the person who matters most. That is not always love. Sometimes that is simply your nervous system recognizing an old room, and old rooms can feel like home even when they taught you how to disappear. So let's slow this down. If an avoidant says this to you, if they say some version of, "I don't want to lose you," what are you actually seeing? You are seeing the collision between attachment and defense. That's what you're seeing. Part of them wants the bond. Part of them fears what the bond requires. Part of them feels relief in your presence. Part of them panics at being affected. Part of them wants to come closer. Part of them wants to regain control by stepping back. And those parts can exist at the same time. That's why avoidant behavior feels so confusing to the person on the other end. You keep asking, do they care or not? And the answer is often yes. That's the problem. They do care. They just don't yet know how to carry care without converting it into pressure. Think about a powerful engine in a car with bad alignment. The engine is real. The horsepower is real. The movement is real. But if the system is off, the very power that should take you somewhere starts pulling against the road. You feel the drag. You feel the wobble. You feel the correction every few seconds. That's what happens when somebody has genuine feeling but no secure structure to hold it. The feeling doesn't disappear. It misfires. And if you don't understand that, you'll personalize all of it. You'll think their retreat means you were too much. You'll think their silence means you imagined the bond. You'll think their distance is proof you were foolish. You'll think if you say it better, love harder, become easier, prettier, calmer, smarter, less emotional, more patient, more spiritual, then the old machinery in them will suddenly become new. It won't. Not because you're not enough. Because no one is enough to do another person's inner work for them. That is such an important sentence. I want you to let it land. No one is enough to do another person's inner work for them. You can inspire it. You can invite it. You can model safety. You can refuse chaos. You can love clearly. But you cannot digest fear on behalf of someone else. You cannot metabolize their intimacy panic for them. You cannot make them value what they are not yet willing to protect. And this is where real self-respect enters the room. Because if you're the one, if you are the person who got through to them, if you are the person they cannot neatly dismiss, then your responsibility is not to become intoxicated by that role. Your responsibility is to stay awake inside it. Stay awake to what is happening. Stay awake to what is not happening. Stay awake to what they said. Stay awake to what they avoid doing. Stay awake to what your body feels every time you make excuses for inconsistency. Your body knows before your fantasy does. Your body knows when you are chronically bracing. Your body knows when contact is relief and withdrawal is injury. Your body knows when you are spending your days managing ambiguity instead of living your life. Your body knows when love has become a waiting room. And no human being is meant to build a home in a waiting room. Now let me say something that may sting a little, but it will set you free if you let it. Sometimes what thrills you most is not being loved. Sometimes it is finally mattering to the person who refuses to let anyone matter. And those are not the same thing. One is relationship. The other is conquest. One nourishes you. The other keeps you hooked. And people with big hearts, sensitive hearts, loyal hearts can get trapped there for years because it feels meaningful. It feels like there's a dragon to slay. It feels like if you just stay steady one more month, one more season, one more rupture, one more cycle, the castle gates will open and the whole thing will finally become what you knew it could be. Maybe. But maybe not. And your life is too precious to mortgage it entirely on maybe. There's a moment in any powerful relationship dynamic where you have to stop asking only what this means about them and start asking what this is asking of you. Not what it promises, what it asks. Is it asking you to betray your standards? Is it asking you to abandon your peace? Is it asking you to become smaller so they can stay unchallenged? Is it asking you to call confusion depth because clarity would force a decision? These are serious questions. Because love does not become more sacred just because it is difficult. Difficulty can refine love, yes. Difficulty can deepen love, yes. Difficulty can expose where growth is needed, absolutely. But difficulty alone does not sanctify a connection. If it did, all suffering would be wisdom, and you and I both know that's not true. Suffering can teach. It can also trap. Pain can sharpen you. It can also become your identity if you are not careful. And a lot of people are addicted to the emotional gym of impossible love because it makes them feel heroic while quietly starving them. Now I want to talk about the sentence itself. I don't want to lose you. Why is that such a big sentence from an avoidant? Because it contains need. And need is terrifying to somebody whose deepest rule has been never need too much. It contains uncertainty. And uncertainty is terrifying to somebody who tries to regulate themselves through distance and control. It contains emotional exposure. And exposure is terrifying to somebody who learned somewhere along the way that being open means being overwhelmed, trapped, consumed, criticized, or left. So when that sentence comes out, what you are hearing is not polished romance. You are hearing a nervous system override its usual script for a moment. You are hearing a person step out from behind strategy and reveal impact. You are hearing the truth before the defenses can reorganize. That matters. It really does. But here is what matters more. What happens after they say it? Do they move toward accountability or back toward ambiguity? Do they name the fear and still choose the conversation? Do they let you into their internal world, or do they toss you one intimate sentence and then disappear for 3 weeks? Do they seek repair after rupture, or do they hope the confession itself buys them unlimited grace? Do they start building something, or do they merely describe what they feel when they are about to lose access to you? That last one is huge, because sometimes avoidant people get most emotional, not when they are moving into love, but when they are moving close to consequence. The prospect of losing you activates the attachment system, yes, but it does not automatically create maturity. It creates urgency. And urgency can sound beautiful. Urgency can sound honest. Urgency can sound like finally. But urgency without structure fades. It panics, clings, retreats, rationalizes, repeats. So if you want to know whether you are truly the one in a meaningful sense, not just the one who activated them, watch whether the confession becomes action. That's the line, not the sentence. The pattern after the sentence. If they begin doing what avoidant people resist most, that tells you something profound. If they start initiating vulnerable conversations instead of only responding when things are on fire. If they start staying present when emotions rise instead of vanishing into work, logic, busyness, independence, or numbness. If they begin tolerating your needs without treating them as threats. If they stop making you earn basic reassurance. If they let themselves be seen in their fear without punishing you for witnessing it. Now you are not just looking at feeling. You are looking at capacity growing, and growth is the only thing that can sustain love. Not chemistry. Growth, not potential. Growth, not one beautiful night. Growth. The reason this matters is because people often attach to possibility with more loyalty than they attach to reality. Possibility is seductive. Possibility lets you project your values into somebody else's unfinished life. Possibility lets you say, I know who they really are. And maybe you do. Maybe you can feel the tenderness in them. Maybe you can sense the love under the fear. Maybe you can see the child under the armor. But insight is not relationship. Vision is not partnership. What somebody could become does not hold you at night. What they are repeatedly willing to build with you, that's what holds. Let me go deeper, because this is where the ache sits for many of you. Sometimes the avoidant says the line, and for a moment everything in you softens. You think, there it is. There is the truth. There is the thing I felt all along. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't asking too much. I wasn't imagining it. And maybe you weren't. Maybe that moment is real. Maybe that sentence is one of the truest things they've said in a very long time. But real does not always mean ready. That's the heartbreak. You can finally get honesty from somebody and still not get relationship. You can be the person who reached them and still not be the person they are able to keep. You can awaken love in somebody and still discover that love alone does not heal their fear fast enough to stop the damage. That is not your failure. That is reality. And reality, when you stop fighting it, becomes mercy. There's a kind of suffering that comes from rejection. Most people understand that. But there's another kind that cuts deeper. It comes from partial choosing, from almost, from someone seeing you, wanting you, even needing you in some private hidden way, and still not meeting you fully in the open. That pain is hard to describe because it denies you clean grief. If someone says I never cared, you can grieve. If someone says I care so much it scares me, and then keeps acting in broken circles, your heart gets trapped between hope and exhaustion. That middle space can ruin years of your life if you don't wake up, because your mind will keep feeding on exceptions. The sweet message, the late night honesty, the soft look, the confession after distance, the way they seem different with you, the way they admit they've never felt this before, and every one of those moments may be sincere. That's why it's so hard. If it were all fake, you'd leave. What keeps you there is not fakery. It's inconsistency wrapped around sincerity. And inconsistency is one of the most destabilizing emotional experiences a human being can live inside. One day you feel chosen. One day you feel invisible. One day they lean in. One day they disappear. One day you feel like home. One day you feel like danger. One day they tell you you matter. One day they act like intimacy itself was a mistake. No wonder you're tired. No wonder your confidence shakes. No wonder you start overthinking your tone, your timing, your needs, your reactions, your worth. But here's the turning point. Their inconsistency does not get to become your identity. Their ambivalence does not get to become your self-concept. Their unfinished inner work does not get to rewrite your value. You do not have to be easy to abandon yourself. You do not have to be hard to love. You do not have to become emotionally minimalist just because somebody else is frightened by depth. And if you grew up feeling like love was something you had to earn by deciphering moods, by staying hyper-attuned, by proving you were worth staying for, then this kind of relationship dynamic can feel almost supernatural, because it places you right back in the old temple. Read the signals, manage the energy, stay valuable. Don't ask for too much. Don't break the spell. But the adult version of you is here now. And the adult version of you has a new job, not to decode every silence, to stop disappearing from your own life while you do it. I want to give you a picture. Imagine standing on the shore, looking at a boat that keeps coming near enough for you to step toward it, then drifting back out the moment your feet touch the water. Near, far. Near, far. You can spend years calling that timing. You can spend years calling that complexity. You can spend years calling that soul-level connection, because every return feels meaningful. But if the boat never docks, you are still living on a shoreline, not in a shared life. And human beings get old on shorelines. That's the truth. Now, does that mean you cut and run the moment and avoidant struggles? No, of course not. Real love requires patience. Real love requires understanding. Real love requires nervous systems learning each other. Real love requires repair. Every human being has defenses. Every human being has fear. Secure love is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to stay honest inside fear. That is a big difference. So what are you looking for? You are looking for evidence that the person is not merely alarmed by losing you, but committed to learning how to love differently, because they do not want to lose what this is. That's what you're looking for. Not a perfect performance, not instant healing, not some movie speech, effort with self-awareness, honesty with follow-through, fear with accountability, distance that is communicated, not weaponized, slowness that still has direction, space that does not erase the bond. Those things matter. Because when somebody is truly moving towards secure love, even imperfectly, you begin to feel more grounded over time, not less. There may be hard conversations, there may be stumbles, there may be old reflexes, but the overall direction becomes clearer. You stop living inside a hall of mirrors. You stop guessing whether the person feels anything. You stop being punished for having a heart. The relationship begins to create more truth than confusion. And I need you to hear this next part in your bones. Being the one is not proved by how much pain you can tolerate. It is proved by whether the connection calls both people higher. That is the standard. Not obsession. Higher. Not longing. Higher. Not chemistry. Higher. Not emotional drama. Higher. If the relationship makes you lie to yourself, lower your standards, normalize scraps, lose your center, become suspicious of your own needs, and shrink your life around someone else's fear, then you are not in a sacred love story. You are in a repetition compulsion with good lighting. That line is harsh, but it is liberating. Because some of you have mistaken emotional intensity for destiny. And destiny is a word people use when they don't want to examine the pattern. Destiny sounds noble. Pattern sounds accountable. Destiny asks you to endure. Pattern asks you to observe. Observe. What happens when you speak plainly, What happens when you stop chasing? What happens when you ask for consistency? What happens when you name the impact instead of suppressing it? What happens when you no longer reward ambiguity with unlimited access? Now we get somewhere. Because if the person rises, if they don't like the conversation but they stay, if they get scared but they come back with more honesty, if they start facing what they usually avoid, then yes, you may be seeing the beginning of real change. And that is beautiful. Beautiful, not because you won them, because they are finally choosing truth over defense. But if they only become expressive when they feel you slipping away, if they only confess when consequences arrive, if they only reach for you when your absence becomes intolerable, and then go emotionally dark again once access is restored, then what you are seeing is activation, not transformation. Please know the difference. Activation says, don't go. Transformation says, I need to change how I show up. Activation is emotional. Transformation is behavioral. Activation trembles. Transformation builds. Activation can be sincere and still temporary. Transformation becomes a new pattern. And patterns tell the truth. You know, there's a moment many people have after years of these dynamics where they look back and realize something painful and powerful at the same time. They realize they were never really asking for too much. They were asking the wrong person or the unready version of the right person for what only a regulated, accountable, available human being can provide. That realization hurts because it strips the fantasy, but it also heals because it returns you to reality. And reality is where your life is, not in the future version of them, not in the potential version of this, not in the speech you hope they'll make, not in the consistency you keep trying to earn here, now. In your body, in your standards, in your peace, in the choices you are making with your one life. So let me give you something practical, something small, something you can do in under 90 seconds the next time you feel pulled into this spiral. Stop. Put both feet on the ground. Take one slow breath in and a longer breath out. Then ask yourself 3 things, very simply. What did they actually do? What did I imagine it meant? What do I need in order to remain self-respecting here? That's it. Not what do I hope, not what could this become, not how do I keep them, what happened, what story did I build, what do I need. If you do that honestly, your whole inner life begins to reorganize, because now you are no longer drowning in projection. Now you are separating fact from fantasy. Now you are refusing to let old wounds become present-day interpreters. Now you are meeting your own life like an adult, and that matters more than whether this person chooses you. I know that may not be what you wanted to hear, but it may be exactly what saves you. Because the deepest win here is not finally hearing the avoidant say the magic sentence. The deepest win is becoming the kind of person who can hear it without abandoning reality. Becoming the kind of person who can receive vulnerability without losing discernment. Becoming the kind of person who can love deeply and still remain anchored in self-trust. That is power, quiet power. The kind of power that changes your whole future. You stop bargaining with mixed signals. You stop collapsing around potential. You stop treating your intuition like an inconvenience. You stop calling longing wisdom. You stop auditioning for the role of irreplaceable. And you begin asking a better question. Not am I the one they feel most deeply for, but can this love become a place where both of us tell the truth and grow? That question will save years. And for some of you, there is grief in that. Because you already know the answer. You know the sentence was real. You know the bond was real. You know the tenderness was real. You know you reached them. You know they may never forget you. And still, you are beginning to understand that being unforgettable is not the same as being well loved. That hurts. It hurts because part of you wanted the pain to mean promise. Part of you wanted the depth of feeling to guarantee the depth of outcome. Part of you wanted to believe that if 2 souls touched something real, reality would rearrange itself to honor that. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, your job is not to argue with the truth until you break. Your job is to bless what was real, release what was harmful, and keep your heart open enough to recognize a healthier love when it arrives. That takes courage, a different kind of courage than waiting. Waiting is familiar. Discernment is brave. Because discernment forces you to let go of the version of love where your role is to rescue, endure, convince, or prove. Discernment says I can honor what they feel without sacrificing what I need. I can have compassion for their fear without converting it into my assignment. I can understand the wound and still refuse the wound's consequences in my daily life. That is mature love. Mature love does not ask you to shut down your needs so someone else can avoid theirs. Mature love can move slowly, yes. It can be tender, it can be imperfect, it can be healing, but it does not make your nervous system live on starvation rations while calling that romance. It does not confuse silence with depth. It does not use mystery as a substitute for mutuality. It does not make you build a cathedral out of crumbs. So if an avoidant says this to you, if they say, I don't want to lose you, receive it with open eyes. Let it be meaningful. Let it be human. Let it touch you. But do not let one true sentence outrank the whole pattern. That is the trap. The whole pattern is the truth of the relationship. The sentence is the truth of a moment. Sometimes the moment is the doorway to a new life together. Sometimes it is simply the most honest thing a defended person could say before returning to the only pattern they know. Your peace depends on knowing which one you are in, and the way you know is not by more analysis. It is by time, behavior, consistency, accountability, and whether the relationship increasingly creates safety instead of confusion. That is the measure. At the end of all this, what matters most is not whether you were the one who made an avoidant feel deeply. What matters most is whether you remain the one who stayed loyal to your own soul while love tested you. Whether you could stand in the fire of longing and still tell yourself the truth. Whether you could love without kneeling before confusion. Whether you could let someone's fear be theirs without making it your identity. Because the right love, even when it is challenging, will not make you vanish. It will ask you to deepen. It will ask you to speak. It will ask you to stay real. It will ask you to keep your heart open and your eyes open at the same time. And if this person truly means it, if this is not just panic but awakening, then they will not merely say they do not want to lose you. They will begin, imperfectly but unmistakably, to live like losing you would require them to become more honest, more present, more available, and more brave. That is when the words mean something lasting. Until then, let the sentence be information, not a fantasy. Let it be a window, not a wedding. Let it be evidence of feeling, not proof of capacity. And you, my friend, keep your standards where your peace can still breathe. Because the real question was never only whether you were the one. The real question is whether you remember all the way through this, that you are not here to be almost loved.